Good to go? We're ready when you are.
There we go. It's a good thing we're all slacking.
We're recording.
Call to order this District of Clearwater Council workshop for Wednesday, October 25th, 2023 at 1-ish. I'd like to begin by acknowledging that we're fortunate to be gathering together on the unceded territory of the Sim people who have been caretakers of this land since time immemorial. Under item 3.1 is suspension of the rules for council workshop. Section 232 of the council procedure bylaw number 268/2022. The rules governing council meetings are hereby suspended when council is gathered for the purpose of a council workshop. And I think that's it. Do I have to actually make a vote on that one?
No, we don't.
No. Okay, thank you. So I guess we move on to 5.1. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. Just as Elsid puts up the presentation, we'll just talk about a few things. First of all, I'd like to welcome James Thackeray, our new CEO, to the District of Clearwater and to Clearwater itself. We look forward to his leadership through our process in budgeting this year and all the other wonderful things he will be doing for us. So welcome, James. Sorry.
This is how it starts.
So as we go through the workshop, perhaps we could go to the second slide there.
On mics, just because Bill's here? Yeah, just make
Yes,
sure.
we are.
Yeah, okay,
We're
thank you.
As we go through the workshop today, we'll talk about a little bit about the workshop and the financial plan process, go through a little bit of an overview, and then we'll get into the actual project plan, the projects that we have are starting to plan for the 2024 to 2028 years. And number 4 there is council direction. This is where it's not really, it's just to remind all of us that we are here to receive direction from council. If council at any time throughout the presentation or through the workshop would like to direct staff, I just want to remind you, put a resolution on the table. And then you can direct staff, and we will take care of it from there. And that can be done at any time. We'll have a look at the communication plan, the first public consultation, and then the next steps. Is there anything in the agenda that council would like to add?
Anything anybody wants to add? No. Not at this time. Thank you.
All right. Next slide, please. So the definition of workshop is where a group of people engage in intensive discussion or activity on a certain topic. And today our topic is to talk about the financial plan. So I invite you to have a discussion about the financial plan that you see in front of you. Let's, it is the council's financial plan, and staff are here to facilitate that and make it happen. So let's have that conversation. Ask questions if there is certain things that you need or to understand or would like to understand.
There's nothing there. Sorry. I went to my box.
I think it's sitting in front of your box.
So we can wait.
Does anybody have an extra pen?
No. Usually. Said.
Okay.
Nice.
Sorry, your flow is broken.
All right, I was about asking questions. Sometimes council may ask a question and perhaps staff doesn't have the answer on the spot. We will still record that and we'll provide it back to you. So still ask the question. Focus on the projects we have in front of you. and maybe think about how they are strategically aligned with your strategic plan. It's good to focus on the priority of that project. And does it deserve the effort and the resources we're going to put to it in 24 and in 25 and in 26? I'm encouraging council to look a little bit ahead and not just in 24, because we have some big projects that are coming forward that require our attention. Another thing, although council is a group that makes a decision as a group, we all have individual thoughts of a project. I invite you to communicate those thoughts if you so choose, and maybe we can get some really good discussion and make really good decisions based on that. And finally, I'd like to encourage us to, we're going to take a couple breaks in this workshop. Some of us like numbers more than others, and some of them find them tedious. So maybe a couple breaks will help us through the process. Next slide, please. So this is our financial planning process. We've seen this slide before. It has several different buckets, I like to call them, as we move through the process. And I understand the council would like to see a more concise process and probably brought to a close quicker and faster, and I would as well. It provides for a better financial plan. However, we're not quite there yet. We're doing the background work to make that happen. We are starting a month earlier than we did last year.
Nice.
So that could help us in that task. And we're also implementing some software called Questica for the budget process. So we're doing that alongside with the budget process. And we recently hired some temporary staff to help us with that. So it's quite new. So we're still working through that. The software is very powerful, but it will take some time to implement.
Can I ask, are you actually using it right now, or is it just being implemented right now?
Right now, we are loading it full of our information and checking the information and starting to see how we can produce reports and how it ties together with our financial system called Maze and how they will integrate. Theoretically, we would take the Maze data, the actual data that we occur in Maze, and put it and just integrate it with Questica every night. So you could get reports of actual versus budget on a regular basis. However, that integration, the two software systems need to talk to each other, and we need to build that.
Okay.
Yes. And also, I think in this process, we're also looking to have some early adoption for projects. There's been some projects that we've delayed. Delaying them costs us more money, and we don't get in the queue to actually get the projects done. So we will try to do that this year. Next slide, please. This is just a slide, we've seen it before, but it's just to remind you that although we have a financial plan process, we also have a property tax process where we receive the completed roll in late December, early January was from BC Assessment, and then we receive the revised roll in about March, and then we can start calculating the property taxes based on the financial plan we have developed. From that, we update all the rates in our system. We prepare the property tax notices, and in May to July, we receive all the payments, and then in late September, we have a tax sale for those properties that are delinquent. If you're interested, there's a little video. We've played it before. It's a good video, is Understanding Property Taxes. It's provided to us from BC Assessment. It explains it well how the budget versus the property tax and the assessments play a role in putting the property tax out.
I'm assuming you have a link there. Is that what
Yeah, would you like to see it?
Who wants to see it? Do we want to see that?
Yep.
There you
Put
go.
on.
Let's do it
Play the
again.
video. We love
Let's
YouTube.
see if it
Thank
works.
you.
It worked on my machine, but
Meet the Johnsons.
There they are.
They live in a typical BC municipality. They are homeowners, and each January, they receive a property assessment notice from BC Assessment, along with all other property owners in BC. Later in the spring, they also receive a property tax notice from their local municipality. Property taxes are determined by your local municipality and based on the assessment value provided by BC Assessment. Let's assume an imaginary town has 3 properties, and all 3 properties have the same assessment value of $100,000. Assuming the total taxes needed to balance this town's budget is $900, then the tax rate must be set at $900 divided by 100,000 plus 100,000 plus 100,000, which equals $0.003, in order to collect the $900 needed for the town to operate for the year. That means each property would have to pay $100,000 times $0.003, or $300. Each property pays their share of taxes based on their assessment value. This looks simple, but let's see what happens the following year when assessment values change. House number 1 is assessed at $150,000, house number 2 at $100,000, and house number 3 at $70,000. House number 1's assessed value increased by 50%. House number 2's stayed the same, while house number 3's decreased by 30%. In this scenario, the town's average assessment value increased by $150,000 plus $100,000 plus $70,000 divided by 3, equaling $106,667, or 6.67%. If the total taxes needed to balance the town's budget are the same in year 2 at $900, then a new tax rate must be calculated in order to balance the budget. $900 divided by $150,000 plus $100,000 plus $70,000, which equals $0.0028125. That means the taxes that each house pays in year 2 will change to $421.88 for house number 1, $281.25 for house number 2, and $196.87 for house number 3. The town still collects the $900 needed to operate for the year, but compared to year 1, each house will pay a difference of plus $121.88 for house number 1, minus $18.75 for house number 2, and minus $103.13 for house number 3. As you can see, how your taxes change each year depends on how your assessment changes in comparison to the average assessment changes in your city. In our example, the average assessment increased by 6.67% to $106,667 in year 2. Because house number 2 and house number 3's assessment change was less than the average, they had a tax decrease, even though the city didn't collect more in total taxes. Only house number 1 with a 50% increase in assessment value had to pay a significant increase in taxes. This is a simplified picture of how your taxes are calculated each year. BC Assessment works hard to ensure your property assessment is fair, accurate, and equitable. You and your community benefit as a result. We are BC Assessment, and we value BC.
That was cool.
Yeah, that one's a good one. It's
You've
actually on
received your
YouTube.
annual property assessment.
And when we get to tax season, I've seen staff floated out, but anytime somebody starts getting into the weeds online, I'm like, watch the video.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Yeah, they have several really good videos, professionally done. All right, next slide. So the next section of the quick presentation is our financial overview. And in this section, we're going to talk a little bit about financial stability, flexibility, and vulnerability, our current reserve situation, debt situation, and preliminary 2024 impacts that we're seeing coming economically. So, oh, no, go back one. We're going to stay here for a bit. Okay, thanks. So I have a question for council is, what does financial stability mean to council? And the reason I ask council is that I have read financial guidelines of several communities and they're all different. We could go to ratios and things like that, but every community has their own definition of what financial stability means to them. It can mean, you know, we're going to provide services to the community over a long period of time, and we have the resources to do that. They do talk about that the organization is able to renew their assets throughout time, and they can generate their own revenue, and they can afford to do that. And it can mean that the property tax rates are stable. So does council have, when council talks about stability, financial stability in their strategic plan, do they have any thoughts of what that means?
Interesting.
Not to put you on the spot, but if there is anything there, or if you have any comments that staff would like to hear that as a workshop activity.
Yeah, fire away and use your mics if you do have comments. I mean, for me, it's mostly keeping things as steady as we possibly can, recognizing the world will throw bumps at us. So, in other places that I work, it's understanding that we're going to have inflationary cost increases and other pressures, but trying to prevent the need for our tax rates to continue to do this while still long-term planning for all our future needs, all the things that we need to accomplish, and especially in a 5-year plan, because then we start talking 10 and plus year plans. But it can't be done just. The concept of trying to keep taxes low always is not helping you with that situation. You can't start from that. You have to actually decide what you're actually going to get done. Go ahead, whoever wants to add.
Yeah, my thoughts on it is keeping it sustainable and predictable, so that there's no surprises down the road. We don't incur debt to the point that we're struggling and having to look at raising taxes through the ceiling in one big jump. It's just that predictability, the stability, and that's for the long term. Like expecting some growth, but not overbuilding or over investing into it, where we end up in a situation where we're not getting back from the community to support that.
What does that mean?
To me, it's
Bad one.
recognizing that growth is good, but it has to be done in a measured way that is sustainable without going into massive debt that impacts on the infrastructure of or on the operation of the community. Does that make sense?
But I think
Yeah, I think for me, if I may, I think for me, it's stability is about the services offered, because I don't think we can control the actual tax rate necessarily as well as we can the services. Like, I'll give you the example. If we have like a major piece of infrastructure fail, or say a fire hall that needs to be replaced, or a major update like that, that may result in a tax raise associated with that cost. Whereas to me, it's about providing that stable level of service and having like a planned arc of service delivery, if that makes any sense.
Bill? Yeah. Anybody else? Okay. No, go ahead. Keep moving. Thank you.
Thank you for that. The next item that we're talking about is flexibility, and typically that is the ability for the local government to take advantage of opportunities. I'm not sure what that would look like, but if there is an opportunity and we had the cash or the funds, we could take advantage of that. It also is flexibility relates to emergencies as well. If something should occur that requires funding, we have those funds for that emergency. We can measure our emergency funds by percentage of revenue if council so decides to do that. Or we can measure it by, debt service to revenue. And because we have very, very low debt to revenue, we appear to be quite flexible. We also have our own source of revenue to total revenue. There's probably some areas where we could improve there to generate more revenue to pay for, especially in the water and sewer funds. And then there's another flexibility. It demonstrates that it's called net book value over total assets that we have. What that means is as our older assets depreciate, their net book value decreases. And however, the total TCA is still at a higher level. So what we want to do is we want to demonstrate that we are replacing our assets when they need to be replaced. If that ratio keeps falling, it means that we're not replacing our assets and we don't have, or we may not have the funds to replace those assets. So that's part of flexibility as well. So it's good to think about what it means in terms, in layman terms out in the community, but it also is good to just look at the numbers and see what it means for financially as well. And we could do that if council decides. Also, financial vulnerability could mean where are we vulnerable? So how is council looking at our financials and determining how vulnerable we are? If something should happen, do we have those funds available to us? And in some ways, the district is doing quite well with that. In some ways, we have some improvements there where we are, if we're heavy grant focused, we're quite vulnerable. We can't generate enough revenue to do the day-to-day activities. So from just reviewing some of the items that to prepare this presentation, there's some potential improvements, and I think we've talked about it before, like the long-term strategic financial framework. We talked about that. It's on our financial plan. And that leads to maybe a more longer term instead of the guidelines. It leads to actually planning out towards 25 and 50 years of our assets. And along with that, it's just step by step. Now you're building your reserves. You need to put money aside to support that, or we have, somehow there is a decision how to fund all those renewing of assets and renewing our infrastructure. So those are things like the longer term visions of the District of Clearwater. Where do we want to go? So that brings us to reserves. So the next slide is a list of our reserves. The reserves are broken down between the three funds, so the general fund, the water fund, and the sewer fund. Just explaining each category, and then it's broken down between operating, capital, and other, DCCs, or unrestricted surplus. And then along the top is our opening balance as of our financial statements in 2022, where we are estimating where we will be in 2023. So if I just look at the bottom line, the total, in 2022, at the end of the year, we had $12.5 million. And at the end of 2023, we've done some really good projects. We'll be at $12 million. So we are eroding our reserves by $500,000. Not necessarily a bad thing, because we saved money to do that, but that's what the numbers say. The item that is highlighted there in orange represents unrestricted surplus. And at this time in our financial statements, it's one number, but it really should be broken down between water and sewer, so we can manage our funds appropriately. And we would have a better financial picture on how each of the funds are operating and how successful they are financially.
So in saying that, breaking it into two numbers is because water pays for water and sewer pays for sewer?
Yes.
Thank you.
Is there a reason why they're not separated at this current time? Is that because the system didn't allow for it?
Historically, there was a change in the financial reporting.
Okay.
And so we need to actually go back and separate it, looking at all the transactions. It's a little bit of a project.
Gotcha.
And we have resources for that, and we're working on that as a priority.
Okay.
So the purpose of reserves is for emergencies we talked about. if we had a healthy emergency reserve, it's usually held in your unrestricted surplus. It would be about $1.3 million, represents about 25% of your revenue. Your reserves also are for projects and for operating stabilization. I heard that part of stability is to make sure that our property taxes are somewhat consistent. No surprises. And that could help us with providing that we would fund operating expenses through the operating stabilization reserve. The total value of the reserves are healthy. The $12 million is really healthy. However, the use of the reserves may not be aligned with some of council priorities. You'll see that the capital reserve is $2.7 million in the general fund, and the other reserve of 3.6 is not really available for us to use for capital. And that is because it is for it represents the Wellsgrave Community Forest Commission donations and the cemetery and the transit. So those aren't really available for us.
Could you please tell me what the Wellsgrave Community Forest money has been earmarked for?
Donations.
And that's it? Like, is that the only criteria?
At this point, as per policy and bylaw, that's my understanding.
Only for donations? Okay.
Outgoing grants.
Outgoing grants, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, unless, there obviously is some work to do with that area, so we will work through that and as staff. But the current bylaw, we have a current bylaw, we have a current policy, and until those are changed, that's what the intent is there.
Okay, thanks.
So as you can see is that as we go through the projects, you'll see that water reserve in total is about 300,000 and sewer reserve in total is about 260,000. And you'll see that we have significant projects in the water and sewer, and we have to fund those. So it's a little bit of a challenge there, but we work through it. Next slide. This slide is just to demonstrate our debt load. Our debt load at the end of 2022 was about $276,000. At the end of 2023, it'll be about $210,000. We spend about $65,000 in debt payments. It's very low for a local government. However, if council wishes to go to debt for some projects, it's a legislative process and it takes time to secure that debt. That's why I encourage council to look to the future on how we are going to fund some of those priority projects. And next slide, please.
Can I ask one question?
Sure.
If you were, say, to get, say, a debt load of, I don't know, 5 million, I'm just throwing this out of my butt, what kind of time frame would you be looking at if it was, say, for infrastructure means type thing?
Well, I would think it would be somewhere between 6 and 18 months.
Okay.
We just have to hit it the right way.
time.
I think it's twice a year that twice a year we have to go to MFA.
Okay.
It's a process we have to follow, and then there's an AAP process as well.
Yeah, the MFA only issues bonds twice a year. It's their fall and their spring issue. So depending on how you time your project and get through the hoops, typically, yeah, you got to look out year and a half.
Okay.
You have to time it.
So related to the, and you mentioned the acronym there, related to that, there's also, we can't just go out and say, as council, and say, we're going to borrow $5 million. Let's call it for sewer improvements. There is a process for that, and can you just basically explain the process? And there's alternative approval process, and there's also referendum, because this has come up in other jurisdictions, but it hasn't come up in Clearwater, and maybe just the pencil sketch of that.
So the process, I have it here, the loan authorization bylaw process. So council decides they want to go forward with a debt, we would go through and we would have a bylaw. I would go through its readings. We would get an inspector's approval. They would either go through an assent program or elector approval exemption. And then we would go through a bylaw adoption. So there's a process we have to follow with MFA if we choose to go with them.
So one of them is essentially giving the voters time to. We put it out there that we're going to borrow, say, $5 million. If a certain percentage of the voters say no, we don't approve of that, form essentially a petition. It will have to go to a vote, or we can go out in front and basically say we're going to ask if the town wants this and votes to approve this debt if it's over a certain debt limit. So there's two ways to do it, and quite often you see now the alternate approval process is where people start because it's the cheaper and faster of the two options. Quesnel put out to their community for I think $6 or $9 million worth of improvements to the rec center, an alternative approval process, and it failed. And now, so they still have to do these repairs. So now they're having to go to a different process, either a citywide vote to see if they get enough votes to say, yes, we're going to do this, or find another way to do these repairs. So this has not, the only reason I'm bringing this up is this has not happened in Clearwater to the best of my memory.
Any other questions? Okay, next slide, please. So this is your presentation packs might just be out 2 slides, so just to get to this one. This is just a quick view of the operational impacts, initial ones, of balancing your operating expenses and revenues. So it's called a waterfall chart. And where I did is we started with the long blue line, we started with the 2023 operating costs. And that includes the day-to-day expenses plus salaries. And then on top of that, the blue ones are the expenses and the red ones or the orange ones are the revenues. So as I go through, I added on a little bit for just inflation. So the CPI for the province of BC as of September was 3.3. As of August, it was 4. So we'll see where it ends up as we move through the process. But we have to start somewhere.
Yeah.
I also added an increase for labor and salaries. We have no new debt, but we pay about $69,000 worth of debt payments. And finally, we put money aside and for reserves. And in that $564,000, what we've put aside is the gas tax, $160,000 a year. We put that into reserve to use for projects. We've put in $30,000 in IT reserve. We need to beef that up a little bit. The fire engine, Mike, or our fire chief, has indicated that we need a fire engine, so we increased that fire reserve to $130,000 a year to afford that fire engine in 2029, I believe it is. We've put aside $200,000 into the road reserve, and we've put about $40,000 into the NTSP reserve. And the sewer fund only can afford to put $4,000 into the reserve. And the water fund can't afford to put anything into the reserve at this point. So those are the impacts that I'm looking at for our operating expenses, just to keep the lights on. And it seems quite high. We haven't done anything else. Like, we haven't looked for savings or anything like that. So we're just putting it on the table. Now, when we get to that orange, that orange bar is how we're paying for it. So that is the 2023. So last year's property taxes and last year's fees. So, and then We're going to probably increase the utility fees a little bit. It's gonna cost, and we need to decide what that is. So, but I've estimated about $30,000. It's gonna help us a little bit. The big item here that impacts us is that TMX. TMX is no longer in town, so that's actually a negative, and that's about $700,000 negative for us.
And that's mostly from the collection of fees on sewer.
Septage, yeah, septage and water and sewer.
Yeah, so thank you. I was actually gonna ask that question, is what are we looking at for a decline in income based on TMX not being an active account
Yeah.
here? That's
It is gonna be hit. However, we still get some funding from the TNRD, and we still get a small communities grant that we use to help us with our day-to-day operations of $460,000. And the next item is our non-market change, which is also the TMX of $200,000. So it's going to help us. They were about 60% complete at the end of the year last year. And so we have about $200,000 left to come in for BC assessment. Now, these are just estimates. This is when I went back and looked at my records. That's what I could find that we could expect. That could change once BC assessment looks at it. However, so there is I'm calling it a gap of about $272,000 that we have to figure out what to do with. So again, this is just keeping the lights on, operations, just accepting everything the way it is and just adding it on. So there is some options here, and we can reduce reserves, we can increase fees, there's lots of ways to do this, but it's just a quick way of looking at it and the work we have in front of us. And now we move into our general planning principles as we move forward. And I will go through them, and if council has any other planning principles that they would like to direct staff or thought of, please let us know. So, although we haven't done our financial guidelines, but these are some that are common among local governments. For example, we align our financial plan with the master plans and policies that we have in place. Projects should be prioritized, planned, and funded before they get on the financial plan. Grant funding, ensure the project is a District of Clearwater first. It's a common pitfall for the local governments to develop a project to meet funding. And we're going to go through a few pitfalls in a bit. Ensure all costs are included in the budget. This is another pitfall. So we are really excited about a project that's $20,000, but we forgot to realize that maybe it's going to cost them $5,000 to maintain it every year, and we didn't include it in the numbers. And if council would like to consider debt as a source of funding, direct staff to move forward with the process so we can get started with it. So is there any other planning principles council may want to consider?
I think we can, unless somebody's got something that jumps out at them right now. We're in. Oh, go ahead, Councillor Sim. Is your mic on? Sorry. Yep.
So the only wonder, and it may not be a principle as of yet, but perhaps it's worth a discussion, is that as we look forward and see costs continuing to rise, the only way that we have income is property tax. And is that the direction that we are prepared to continue to go? Or is there thought to develop another revenue stream? So for example, $700,000 from TMX was very helpful to us. It was, almost like a side business there. Or do we continue just to rely on taxes?
That's a good question. Barrier has industrial park. Valemount has an industrial park. There are, Nelson has a utility. They have their own hydro generation, have for 100 years, something like that. So there are other things. Of course, developing that is going to require us to fund the development of that. So so it depends on what we want want to do, and as a very young community.
So, and I agree with that. So while we've got a 5-year plan, right, something like this, is this the 10-year plan to look at? So it's actually planned for now, but not looking for realization for possibly 10 years. Because anything that we were to do, we would have to start now if we're going to do that incrementally. And I just throw that out there because I don't know how this small community with modest growth is going to keep up with the costs.
Good comment.
So, the next slide, I think, is a check-in. Would council like to take a break? No, okay.
So just to let you know, Councillor McKenzie had to leave due to a work emergency.
Just a comment, just to your point, I think there is a potential, it would take some time, but to gather some, thank you, to gather some champions to lobby the provincial government for more funding, because in other provinces, rather than doing one-off little boutique grants, they give you a bucket of money for capital and operating, because because of the nature of local government has very few levers to generate revenue, property tax being the biggest one available. So BC used to give out nice chunks of cash when I started in the business many years ago, and they don't do that anymore, and frankly I think they're derelict in their
Well, the NDP actually did a better job this past little while, is that they've given, the grants to communities, and they just divided it up and said, have at her.
Yeah.
I would say that the federal government with their gas tax, and although I understand where, their intentions are, again, you could look at that as some restrictives as well.
It is, but if just as I'm dating myself, but when I started, probably a municipality half this size would get $450,000 in 1997 dollars, and so that money's in constant value. That money is diminished.
Yeah, and especially with you look at all the different things that municipalities are now responsible for, which
That's
is a
right.
cost,
What
which
is
is
it?
very difficult to.
60% of the expectations, 8% of the taxation, I think is the thing
Yeah.
that's said out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I
sure.
think there's room and there's precedent to bang the table. I guess the province needs to step up, because unless they give the local governments more financial levers, which I don't see that happening, they really have to start sharing some of the revenue.
All right. Projects. So, go ahead.
So just before we start there, and maybe you can help me understand where this ties in. So when we looked at our 2023 to 2027 budget from last year, we had a number of projects that we had included in there, but we assigned grants to them. So in particular, to cite an example, would be the Siphon project. Where do we see those coming up now, and when do we start talking about them in terms of we can't keep us assigning them to grants? So where do we have the hard conversations here?
I think we start right now with projects.
But I didn't, are they projects in here? Because I didn't see as many as that we had in our 2023 to 2027 budgets.
Yeah.
Like, I figured we had about $15 million in grant. I'm making that up, but it's for a minute, don't put me. But, we've got one, but when do we really look at it? And then to Councillor Matheson's point is, when do we put that into a strategy? How do we see the growth to pay for what we need? And is that what we're about to embark on?
I don't know if it's growth, but
Well, to go, how do we pay for it? Because there's the balancing act.
yeah.
So whether we grow our taxes, grow our population, or grow a business model.
Right now, we have a growth in the number of projects that we need to deal with, unfortunately.
True.
And how do we pay for that? And some of those we're going to have to, like the Siphon project, if grant funding is not something we can access, and there still is apparently the Accelerator grant we haven't tried to tap into, or haven't recently tried to tap into. We will have to make the decision as a council whether or not we're going to borrow for that, because it has to be dealt with at a certain point, and that conversation's been going on in the background for quite a long time. That said, it's going to have to go through the process that I was talking about before. So it isn't a quick fix. So us just deciding that we want to fix the Siphon by borrowing it is still a 6 to 18 month process
Don't we-
that may fail with the public. So, yeah.
I feel there's many prongs to that. And there's many prongs to that answer. It's not one or the other. It's, we have to do it all somehow. We have to look at today, we have to look at the future. So the start is this, in the steps that the strategic plan is really important. Everything is based on the strategic plan. Your OCP is really important. Your financial guidelines are important, but those are the base, and then you go into financial guidelines, and then we go to long-term financial planning. However, some of these projects are hitting us today. We're thinking about them today, even though we haven't done all the foundational work. So from these foundational projects, last year we decided to put $100,000. We weren't getting those grants for the siphon. We put $100,000 to the siphon to get a Class B estimate. So we're working on that. And from that, we're hoping to we also put $50,000 for other projects to get a Class B estimate. And from that, we're hoping that the funders, the grant funders, will see that we're ready to go and get those grants for those projects. So I like the question, but I think it's not an easy answer, and I think we have to move towards that answer.
And I think you've identified exactly the answer I was hoping for, is because last year I felt that we identified them. So this year, what's our next steps? Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
So talking about last year's project, so I just want to give you just a few stats. Last year, we had about 50 projects and 21 carry forward, and it cost us about $3 million. This year, we have 48 projects. They're coming up at $7.6 million and about 21 carry forwards. So doing less, we're not quite there yet. We're going to have to keep working at it. But in this section, we're going to, in the next couple slides, we're going to ask each of the managers to talk about their projects and you know, why is it important? Why is it a priority? How are they going to fund it? But before we do that, we're going to just look at pitfalls of project planning. There we go. So back in the day when Auditor General for Local Government actually published perspectives on, or small booklets on capital budgeting, they highlighted several pitfalls for project funding or project management. And they identified 20 of them. And I just was wondering if council understands or would like to share what they feel is, any of those pitfalls would resonate with them. For me, I have a few. What resonates with me is that we're over optimistic. We really would like to do a great job and plan the projects, and we're over optimistic, and that creates, perhaps we don't have enough contingency, or it could also create, sometimes we have double contingency. Sometimes we're so eager we don't take care of the details and we wait for them later, and then that creates a difficulty with project management because you didn't consider that item. Not considering life cycle costs. When you consider a project, we're going to talk a little bit about 37 East project, for example. When you consider that project, it's going to cost us X dollars. We've delayed it since, I know someone said it was 2017, but Roger's going to correct me if I'm wrong. And so the funding for that project has just increased, but also the whole project's going to cost, you know, then we have to maintain whatever that park is. We have to maintain it every year for whatever that maintenance cost is. So that whole project is now way more than it was in 2017, yet it's still on our project list. The whole project costing is so important, and understanding what we want to do. It's a priority that lines up with everything that council would like in the strategic plan, and we want to put effort to it because every dollar is worth, it's really an important dollar now, because we have some big projects, as Councillor Sim had mentioned later, that we have some large projects that are coming down the pipe. If those are still a priority, we have to pay for them somehow. So we're looking forward to that. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, on your question, because there was you sort of asked a question there. I mean, Councillor Sim has identified one up front, is that we're overly reliant on grants, and counting on grants. that are often oversubscribed, even when it's good times, 5 to 1. So 20% get approved out of the 100% that apply. The other one that we heard from Mario Perotti, the auditor, a couple years ago, and I've heard it in multiple presentations he's done, is that grants are going to dry up. There is enough federal debt and deficits issues that some of these things that we've seen coming forward for years and years, or very strong likelihood of a change in federal government here shortly. And we're 1 year out from a provincial election. We may see a whole bunch of grants show up in the next calendar year, but if there's a change in government, or even the government stays the same, they may not feel the need to be as generous once they get a new mandate. So there are some things at play there that we have to think about as well. Those are things that I see as risk beyond everything that's listed in the slide.
All right, next slide, please. Oh, it's hard to see. However,
We've got it on our thing. So this is the one 2024 to 28 workshop admin project.
yes. So on that project list that we have in front of us on the slide, you'll see on the far left corner, far left, you have ADM, admin. The ones that are colored green are capital. The ones that are green are called special projects. And the difference between the special projects are a project that doesn't necessarily have a tangible characteristic. So they would be like master plan. You can't sell a master plan to somebody else, right? Not a car. So the capital is the car, and the operational is the manual. Okay, or something like that. So going forward, LSID Prime would like to probably talk to you about the computer replacement program.
Absolutely, thank you.
Sorry, is this on a page in our package?
Yes, Your Worship, this is page 44.
Business case.
Thank you. Just gonna get ahead to there because I'm looking at multiple things. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. So this is in addition to 2023, we had a business case and a project for replacing some IT infrastructure as well as some computers. I believe it was budgeted about 51,000, most of which was spent on the server upgrade, which was very legacy and very much required. We replaced about 7 additional computers and workstations on top of that, which left 19 sort of beyond end of life. So those are looking to get replaced in 2024, as well as additional equipment such as uninterruptible power supplies, which are all in throughout the office, but every last one of them's failed, as well as monitors for throughout the office because they're all very legacy. Finding connectors and adapters for some of them is actually difficult now. They don't just plug into any of our workstations because they're so old. Wow. Getting those replaced, and that would be basically the total of the 62,000 would be 19 stations as well as the monitors and UPSs. That is everything there. Any questions? Yes. Oops, sorry, that's not me.
What's the replacement plan? Because computers are not going to last a lifetime, either does my dishwasher. So with that, is there a plan, and is it attached to how we're going to budget moving forward?
Yes, Your Worship, through to Councillor Sim. There is a plan moving forward. We did add additional funding into the reserves each year moving forward, anticipating approximately 5 or 6 workstations to be replaced each year and not just sort of lump sum as it's kind of happening right now.
So just supplemental to that, so you're saying that into the reserves, we have been doing it, or we're doing that starting moving forward?
We're doing that starting moving forward.
Okay, so we're looking at about how much per year for the reserves then?
I believe we'd put in about 15,000 per year into the reserves now moving forward. Yeah. Ms. Claassen is going to fact check me right now, I can tell.
No, that's okay. It
Yeah.
just to get an idea. So as you say,
Yeah.
so it's wonderful to see the planning forward. Thank you.
Okay.
Knowing what we know, I've added 30,000 annually, spending 15
Oh, I see.
in the reserve. Yeah.
Oh, that's where I got confused.
Would you like me to move on
Just
to?
keep going.
I'll move on to my next project now, which is just some filing cabinet replacements. We have found through our records management sort of project that the curling filing system we have right now is really not well suited for sort of day-to-day use. They don't have drawers that pull out. Accessing the bottom ones is, you know, you're lying on the ground trying to sift through them. It's really not ergonomic, and on top of that, the height of the shelving is actually inadequate, and so we're actually shredding documents, not into pieces, but yeah, damaging documents, kind of constantly putting them in and out. So this project is sort of just a simple replacing what we have here. This cost may come down if we can, you know, offload the current assets we have, but that's not that's not brought into account in this cost. Any questions on that? It is somewhat straightforward. It's really, yeah, not very user-friendly, the current filing cabinets we have right now.
So let's just talk about the philosophy of the business cases that are being presented right now. We're absorbing them. We're getting them now. This is not the only opportunity. We're going to have to discuss them. So this is a lot to absorb.
Certainly is.
Yeah, go ahead.
So one of the common themes that's brought up is the to-do lists and projects bring forward, the amount and all of that. So I'm just curious, as we bring things forward, noting that there's still quite a strong carry forward, where do we have the discussion about what's going to be dropped as opposed to what's going to be added, and where does this fit into the priority? So, you know, what's going to give, or how easy is it? So just trying to get a context of how we do this, because we continue to go back to the same conversation about this long list without allocation of easy, difficult, long-term.
Absolutely. It's a great question. I think for myself, this is a high priority project, as well as records management in general. Getting to the very root of a functioning government is something that needs quite a bit of work, and part of that is being able to access our records, know where our records are properly, and this is a very important one. I would drop many others before I drop to this one.
So you'll notice that there are, under the priority list, there are little items there that define what the priority is. The cabinet is a health and safety priority. At least that's how I've characterized it.
Thank
If
you.
council-
Codes, okay, thank you.
You see those codes?
Third column code, or technically fourth column code. HS, IR, CP, RM, Strat. Yeah, okay, thank you.
So, just to,
I'm
hello?
going to keep going on this one because I think it's important, is where do we have the discussion about what's dropped if it moves forward, or how do we tie that in? And maybe it's not here, and I'm okay with that. But if we're going to if it's important, and you just said it, Al said, is there's many other projects I would drop before this one. And I'm like, oh,
But what are those?
yeah. So because we don't want to get into the overload. We want to prioritize. We want to do it better, and we want to make it so that the day-to-day workloads are that it's working towards something as opposed to feel like you're drowning.
So, after we've gone through all the projects, if council would like to give staff direction, if they feel comfortable with it, please do. Put a resolution on the table if you feel comfortable, or we can come back, like, or would you like to prioritize each of these projects?
Yeah,
Or would you like
For-
staff to
yeah.
prioritize? Sorry.
Zachary.
If I could make a suggestion, I think, sorry.
You're on. Yeah, you're on.
If I could make a suggestion, I think it would be worthwhile just to go through the list, and just so everybody's reading off the same hymn book, so to speak. And I think we can touch on this when council does its retreat on a strategic plan, because it's one of the issues in the strategic plan. And I think just like to put some thought to how to shape and put some edges on this. So I'm still sipping from a fire hose. It is, I own that. But there are some things that I'd like to recommend, but I'm holding back because I don't know all that's going on. So I don't want to put my foot in my mouth yet. Although I'm sure there'll be lots of opportunity for that. So I'd just like to take a little more time just to see see the whole thing.
So when, sorry, I speak.
Go ahead, sorry, I'm
The idea of this workshop is to hear all the plans that people have and ideas, and we're going through the costs. This isn't a decision-making.
You're not making decisions here.
We're just hearing everything.
Today, you're just hearing them, and you're hearing the pitches and why they are, and then you get to ask questions on why they are.
Right.
And at a later date, as Mr. Thacker suggested, we can sit down and prioritize them. And occasionally, there are, I would say, we hear 30. Sometimes we cut 4 or 5 or 6.
Right. I would hope that we could do this so that we hear all this, and then our next step is to prioritize afterward, like do it fairly quickly without there being many months in between.
Yeah, I would see this happening next month,
Yeah, okay.
unless you have a different.
No, I just,
Yeah, that works.
Okay.
because I like this idea.
Mr. Smith next, or are we?
Nope, we're still
Oh.
going on, records management, we talked about financial strategy guideline. This is simply a carry forward from last year, once the strategic plan is complete. And then we'll carry forward to the financial guideline.
Can I ask a question about the strategic plan? When do we finalize that?
That's a conversation.
Okay,
Isn't that a workshop?
Yeah, that we're gonna.
Artwork?
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
Like, we're not done, right? Like, we
We
still
are
have
not
another-
done. No,
Yeah.
no. I think we're reviewing the documents as they came to us, and
Yeah.
then we're going to have a discussion as to what we really want to get out of this, and maybe some comparables to other people's strategic plans. As Councillor Sim pointed out, I think we went a little bit long on this one, and there's differing opinions on how long a strategic plan for our part is. There's 2 parts. Mr. Thackeray and I have had this conversation. There's the part which is what we set as sort of vision, and then there's the second part, which is how staff delivers on the items in that vision. So
Okay. Just-
we need to our part is to figure out the vision, which may only be a page and a half or 2.5 pages.
Right.
Their part is a whole other thing.
Thank you. Secondly, last year we put in $50,000 as a recurring special project for engineering on a annual basis to review projects that are coming up and to make sure that they're ready for Class B estimates and potential granting programs. And then we have a new additional training program. This was presented by the interim CAO of $30,000 a year. And we provided in your package all the training programs that there are out, an example of some of the training programs that there are out there. And I just want to have a look at the business case there. So just from the project description is,
What page? Sorry.
I don't have,
Oh,
I don't have the page number for the
I don't think we've seen that.
training program, business case. I have the business case, but I don't have the page number.
That would be page 100, 116.
hey, it was close.
What was that?
116.
Oh, 16.
Yep.
So just from that program, the,
116. 1, 1.
116.
Okay.
The interim CAO at the time felt that the job descriptions that we have within the District of Clearwater requires people to have a certification in local government administration or service delivery. The district currently has no structured support to develop this knowledge in employees. This program is meant to support exempt employees in their professional development by encourage training and establishing training goals and providing the supports. This is important to the district as better informed and trained employees or trained staff are best positioned to bring the district and the services it provides to a higher and more professional and more ethical level. So that's the description that was provided for that business case.
And I'm seeing an estimated project cost of $120,000. Is that what's
It's 30,000, she was
per
estimating.
year? Okay, thank you.
30,000 per year.
So would that be aligned to job descriptions? So for example, it's not optional, it's actually required training, or how does that tie in? How do you ensure that it actually manifests? What's the plan on that?
Do you want to take, should I?
I think at this point, I'd just like to review it, and because I haven't reviewed that part of the budget in depth, but I have some thinking on that, so.
Yeah, I think we have some thinking that you have some thinking, and we would like to have some thinking on that too.
Okay, next.
Yeah, that's fine. Thank you, but yeah.
So those are the business cases for the admin area, but you do see that we have certain projects in 2025 as well. We've moved the website renewal project over to 2025 rather than a 2024 project, just to provide us with some resource room. And the climate action plan, we've moved to 2025, and a facilities master plan, we're moving it to 2027. And those are all foundational
You
master
can ask
plans.
the question, Councillor Sim, but I'm going to ask the question. Climate action plan was a legislative requirement, is it not? Now,
Yeah, that's what I was, thank you.
Yes, it is a requirement. We do have an old one, the Community Energy and Emissions
Yeah.
Plan, but we do need to update and add it in. But
And there's a tie-in to getting grants to have. Quite often, there's a requirement to even qualify for grants that we have a climate action plan.
very much so, yes,
Okay,
it
thank
is.
you.
Yeah, sorry, just on that, because I think with the criteria, I think that, you know, what the mayor said is right, that we are probably going to see grants drying up in different ways, but climate is going to be an area of growth. So are we positioned in this particular department to look at that and see how we might be positioned, or what's appropriate? Not chasing grants, but what is appropriate for our planning? And are we resourced for that?
Are we resourced for it? Probably not. I am the climate action coordinator as well still. It carried on with me as I became the director of corporate services. It's very much side of my desk at the moment. However, a climate action plan would involve working with an outside consultant on sort of drafting and developing the plan. It's not impossible to move it forward to 2024. And if it's looking at sort of some foundational aspects in terms of grants in the future for climate action and how that can tie into infrastructure needs as well. Resourcing wise, yeah, it's a bit of a stretch.
Thank you. And I think where you're going with that is is this going to affect our ability to acquire grants?
Yeah, and is it important that we also look at that as the financial plan? Like, so that's what I'm asking, is if that's an area of vulnerability, should that be included, or should we be considering it?
Thanks. What's next? Dev and cemetery and plan. Is that the next?
So the next slide is economic development and cemetery. The first line there, you'll see that there is, if we could just move the slide forward one, thank you.
Jenna, do you want the chair? I just, no, I want you to be able to sit on it, because it doesn't look like you're lower and it's awkward, so I'm comfortable.
Trying to steal my
So the first item on that list is a columbarium. We've put it to 2025 just to just highlight that it is, they feel that we're getting close to being full and we do need that. So I just want to put it on the list. So it's new on the list. The second item there is wayfinding and signage. It's a special project that was with the Economic Development Officer. We've carried that forward at the moment. And then the OCP update, Mr. Thackeray wanted to talk about that or no? Okay, Mr. Thackeray did share that he had some ideas, but he's not.
They're not baked, no, they're not fully baked yet.
Okay, all right, thank you. And then the extended flood mapping, that project we did receive, I think it was $146,000. 46 of it is carried forward and it's still in process. Is there any questions on that group of projects?
With the cemetery, because we're working on the bylaw, does anything, because there's going to be suggestions brought forward from the committee with the bylaw, I do believe. Is there, how does that fit in? Like, in the budgeting process?
So is there, do the suggestions,
Cost money.
what are they? Like, if it meets, if it can fit into the regular maintenance program of the cemetery, then we would put it there. If it's larger, then we need to put it into the capital plan.
Okay. It was a while ago and
Yeah.
it's fuzzy in my brain now, but I know there was going to be a few things suggested, but I don't know the process because that's part is new.
So just, I mean, I don't want to get too far in the weeds. Was it
Yeah,
things,
yeah.
things like new benches or extra
Yeah, well,
facilities?
the signage is what caught me. There was signage in different
Yeah.
groundskeeping processes and general changing of the layout. So I'm not sure
Yeah, so
where
that-
it all landed,
yeah.
but when we finished, it was kind of helter-skelter there.
that will probably be budget 2025 at this point, once you get once a firm list of ideas comes forward, and then that can be considered.
Okay.
But yeah, we're almost at the end of this, yeah.
Well, I know.
But
And
yeah,
I
for
didn't
sure.
know how it all fit
Yeah,
in and
and
how that was
there's
gonna-
I'm just, not to get too far in the weeds, but there's other ways to maybe fund some of those things. Then,
Right.
of course, we have a maintenance issue and a long-term capital replacement issue. Like benches can be sponsored.
Yeah,
blah, blah, blah.
and that's fine. I just wasn't sure, like, the bylaw has to be made even, so I don't know where the process all lies.
You raise actually a really good question. I think it's expectation management is even going back to that committee, is that the first step is to get the bylaw done. And then the second one is with these ideas that will be carried forward to 2025 so that nobody thinks it's going to be done next year. And I think that that is a common issue that we face in this community is, okay, we've done all this work, so can you do it tomorrow? So this would be, just an area where we start changing our practice. It's just conveying realistic expectations.
Would be great, yeah.
Is protective services, and our fire chief is going to talk about those.
Mic turns on. Okay, the first one there is the turnout gear replacement. I know there was discussion last year that did we need a business case for this? We decided to just keep the business case going just so it is captured in the budget process. For the following 2 years, we don't need to purchase any, so we can kind of save some of that 20 grand. Shall I stop at that one, or shall I continue on?
It seems to me that turnout gear is something that we regularly talk about as part of the budget process. Does it not rank sort of with the computer program, is that we set aside $5,000 every year and then we don't have to have the business case because it's just a reality?
Sure, yeah.
Makes sense to me.
Exact same thing, let's just budget for it and put it into carryover, reserve, whatever, for the years that we don't spend it all. Because I think there is, you can set your 20 or your 40 and that's a great estimate, but there are years where, you were gonna do damage, you were gonna have people of different sizes joining the group, and, it's like hockey gear. It smells after a while. Anyways, well, hockey gear, goalie gear has its own special thing, but there's other aspects to this where you're you're right, budgeting annually an amount that it goes into a, reserve of some form that we can just pull out as needed, and then we have a readjustment to the amount we put into reserve if the costs go too high.
Do we need to make a resolution for that? No, okay.
Okay,
Oh, I see.
perfect. Okay,
I have considered that, and I've put it into that $130,000 a year. It's part of the fire truck and part of these items that are coming up.
Gear?
See, yeah. She's so smart.
okay, so the Tender 3 and bush truck chassis replacement, earlier this year, we decided to swap from this year to next year for the chassis. In 2 weeks, the bush truck goes down to get its work done, and then it should be done by prior to the end of November. And then for the following year, we'll order or source a chassis for Tender 3 and do that work. That was from the reserves as well. Just kind of a carry forward and then a separate one for next year. The fire training equipment, that was a grant that council approved applying for at the last meeting. That application's been sent in, just awaiting word on that. The next one, fire kitchen renovation. Sorry, I'll just grab the page 1 second. Page 62 of the package. So the kitchen and upstairs at the fire hall has the repurposed cabinets from the old Centennial Hall, kind of repurposed just to fit there, that here's something for it to sort of function. The idea there is it's been used as an EOC a couple of times in the last couple of years. I know that this is the designated building at the district office here, but until the generators are up and running here, that's the only building that has backup power. So, between now and then it could be used again. So to make it a little bit more functional, more user-friendly, make it look a little nicer, we would like to, present this business case to put some new cabinets in, some counters, and a microwave over the range. So keep going. Okay, no questions there. Okay, the next two are just on there for future for the fire engine replacement in 28. And then the next one will come up to do we want to talk about that one next, or keep going? Okay, the master plan. We brought it forward as a information item last year for this year or for next year. Seeing some pricing, we decided to kind of budget it over 2 years. Some plans are cost quite a bit nowadays. So the idea behind this is to gather a plan for the next 20 odd years on location of a new fire hall, location of water sources up in, say, Greer or Candle Creek, what's needed for the fire department to, continue on. Any questions on that?
No. Just
No,
watch
okay.
Mike Savage do his stuff.
Fire Smart Coordinator and Fire Smart Activities. This year, 2022, we put it in the budget for 23 to apply for the grant through UBCM. That didn't come to fruition this year as we needed to finish off one of the 2 open UBCM grants that we have, and we still didn't quite get there. The one fuel management grant that we had, some of the spatial data and all that was not quite right. Over the summer, BC Wildfire had no capacity to check all that, so we've just finalizing that now. Once we get that, we can apply for that grant, and it's actually up to $200,000 per year for 2 years for this grant to hire Fire Smart Coordinator and a grocery list of different activities that can be done in it as well. So once we get there, we'll bring a report to council to see which kind of activities that we're going to apply for and stuff. So The last one on this page is the fire fuel management. That is the current fuel management project that's close to wrapping up. Council awarded the contract to Mac River at the last council meeting, so there might be a little bit of carry forward for next year, just for the consultants to do the final reporting. And that's it. Any questions? No?
That,
Good. Okay.
or go ahead. You got
I don't know if Councillor Herring's on the line or if he had to step
He's
off.
not. He won't be back till 3.
Oh, okay. So one of the things that I know that he had been mulling around and inquiring is, are we moving into a stage with British Columbia's history that the District of Clearwater actually needs a full-time fire smart coordinator?
Or full-time emergency management
Yeah,
that does
yeah,
fire smart.
I think that's a better one.
That's a
Sorry.
conversation that a lot of communities in BC are having right now.
Yeah.
We're having it. I don't.
So actually,
Go ahead.
To that question, the Fire Smart coordinator, under their the requirements in the grant, up to 20% of the duties of the Fire Smart coordinator can be other emergency type management or fire department or ESS type functions. So with that, we can have about a 20% EPC, emergency program coordinator, duties for that person. So it's a start to a position that we can look forward to in the future.
Staff will be bringing service level requests, which will include additional staff to a meeting in the future.
So this is just day one of sitting on Santa's lap, so to speak. Sorry.
Yes, yeah, and it's a
That's
conversation.
good to know,
that-
actually. It's really good to know.
The emergency management person conversation is happening in a lot of places, and in some of it's the same conversation we've had in the past on building inspector. Do we share somebody with a high skill level with multiple communities? And that's great until we all catch fire at the same time. So, or flood at the same time, which has happened. But I think it's an evolving conversation, and we're, other people are taking the lead, and we can learn from them in a lot of senses. But yes, it's great that there's a 20% availability potentially in this fire smart position for that kind of work.
So next, we're talking about facility projects we have with our facilities. There's 2 projects there with our rooftop air conditioning and air handling projects. They are carry forward, so we'll be doing them or completing them in 2024. I'm going to let Roger, Mr. Meyer, speak further on the newer projects.
Yes, the rooftop air conditioning and the air handlers, we combined that into one project. It's carrying over to next year. We have most of the design done. But it's a good example of one of the problems we run into is when we do decide to move forward with a project, consultants, professionals, contractors, they're all busy. They're not sitting around waiting for the District of Clearwater to call. And so we were not able to get that project completed this year, and that's exactly why. The other project there is the flagpoles. I had brought that up last year. It's more of a cosmetic project, but it allows us to display our flags properly. Right now, when we half-mast our flags, they lay on the roof of the building, which is not according to protocol. The next project there is a generator. I'll let Chad speak to that. Yes.
If Bill's not online, do we need that?
Pardon me?
It is still being recorded.
Okay,
Yeah,
thanks, sorry.
yeah.
Yeah, so the generators have been tendered and awarded.
Would they have?
But there's so just to explain to council, because I don't think they've all heard that. I told a couple people this, that basically there's a delay in getting these for quite a considerable amount of time versus back to managing expectations of the community. The community is aware that we've ordered these, but how long are they out now currently for potential arrival, install, etc.?
Yes, so potentially in the spring. It sounds like the arrival date is better than they had expected originally. So
Okay, so we might actually have them for next
for
spring?
2024, yeah.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Santa is good.
So that's for the DLCC and for the water
Yeah.
plant. Yeah.
Yeah, these are a hard thing to acquire. I also, when we were at the opening of Evergreen, their pad is still there, but they haven't received theirs, I believe, either yet. So, and that was ordered before ours. So, it's,
So the intention is to do the groundwork and put in the pad and all the electrical connections and have it just ready to go, just to drop them in when they do arrive.
excellent. Yes.
So none of that's done yet,
No.
like the pad making and all that? And where is it going? Where is it sitting?
One will be just outside the council chambers
Okay.
on the wall, and the other generator will be right the other direction on the east side of the well number 1 by the cenotaph there.
Okay.
Not building, on the east side of the building.
Cool.
Sorry,
For the Tesla.
the west side of the building.
West side of that.
Sorry.
Towards the top. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, I'm not
thank-
good with east and west.
Yeah, no, that's.
Say whatever you want, it would mean nothing to me.
Towards the bridge or away from it?
Towards the bridge.
Okay.
Most of us don't know where north is because we turn the corner when coming through town.
I'm one of those.
Anyways,
I'm totally one of those.
but thank you for that update. That's far more optimistic than a couple weeks ago.
That's good, yeah. I was worried about that.
All right, Mr. Meyer.
Yeah,
share with us
the
about
next
roof.
project there is the lower roof. That's the storage area on this building down behind the band shell. We've got that for replacement in 2025. Next up is the Sportsplex. We were not able to do all the roof renovations this year because the cost came in too high, so we've carried one section over to next year. Zamboni replacement is a future project. The second floor expansion study is carrying over. The tree removal, there's about 25 trees, large trees behind the arena that have all been killed or are in the process of dying from the fur beetle. That's a project, we could do it this year or carry over to another year. It's not a safety factor yet, it just looks bad to the public and people will complain on Facebook about it, so. The structural component study is also something we're looking at 2026 or maybe 2027, just to ensure the integrity of the building. Any questions?
Yeah, go ahead, Councillor.
So 2 questions. One, with the Zamboni, we know eventually it is going to see its last legs. Is that another case of how we plan forward, or is that in another budget, or is that with the TNRD? How do we work that?
I'll let Linda speak to how the financing works with TNRD.
So we have a gentleman's agreement with the TNRD where they fund 40% of the operations. It's not clear if they fund anything of capital, but we do put, of what they fund, we do put $40,000 into the reserve every year.
So there have been occasions when then Zamboni has failed at critical moments. Do we need to be putting money aside for that?
$40,000 aside for NTSP projects a year.
What you're saying is we have a capital reserve, or we have reserve.
We have some reserve, but it may not be enough by the time we may want to look at fees for services of the NTSP to help pay for the Zamboni in the future.
Have those ever changed, or they've always been the same? The fees, the user fees. Has there been any increase over the last 10 years?
They're due for an increase.
Okay. Curious.
And also, I think we want to formalize the agreement we have with the NTS, with the TNRD.
The second question I had was about the second floor for the North Thompson Sportsplex. That's one of those projects that's stretching out. Is there anything that you feel that council could do to maybe move that faster?
We've just had other projects that are more of a priority right now. And We budgeted originally $50,000 for that. We received a $25,000 grant. However, that grant is to be used for feasibility study, and we just haven't had time to work on that. We've had some preliminary drawings of what's possible in that floor space. And we were gonna use those as part of the feasibility study to go forward with that. And it's something I'm hoping to get to November, December.
Thank you.
Maybe the service level conversation will enlighten us. Thanks.
Okay.
We have the next slide, please. So Mr. Meyer is going to help us move through the projects for the parks.
Yeah, so the parks, so the first one there is 37 East. And Sid, how come my mic keeps going off?
It's not.
Is it?
You're
Okay.
doing really well.
Okay. That project has grown and grown and grown in cost, not in size of the project, just in cost. And originally, it was planned to be a park because that property was bought with park funds. And I believe that the initial thought was that the burnt restaurant was there, council wanted to clean up the property. I really would like council to consider, do we need another park? We have the beach, we have small park, we have the park here at this building. The grant is only for $340,000. We're looking at least another $200,000 to complete this, as well as the $30,000 budgeted this year just to do construction drawings. And that number could easily grow, the 540 to complete the project. I really think we need to consider, do we need another park?
Thank you. Go ahead, Councillor Sim.
No, probably not, but we do need what I would consider a trail head to get into the river trail. I'm really uncomfortable about that trail being potentially really popular and having all those cars driving into that neighborhood. I also think it's really good as an overflow parking lot, and I think that it does not have to be paved. I don't think it has to have a lot of things. I also know from having attended UBCM and TMX's breakfast, they will be looking for project updates, and we haven't delivered on that yet. So for me, I would definitely favor scaling that back. We have talked as a council about just doing the gravel, but I think as terms of parking and having it look like something and not just an empty area would be important. And again, I can't stress the importance of having it as a trailhead so people don't go into the neighborhood there.
Yeah, I think Mr. Mayor, you're right in the essence that we need to have a conversation on what we're doing here, because this is just going to keep going. But yeah, I mean, we do need to find a home for the Loggers Memorial. We do need. I do actually like what Councillor Sim said: overflow parking, and then some wayfinding that this is a place that you can park and access Dutch Lake boat launch and do that. But formalizing it into a nice fancy little park as the design is,
We don't need that.
I just don't see it as the priority that it might have been years ago. And then we have a conversation with Trans Mountain as to what do we hang a plaque on,
Well,
and what other thing can we hang a plaque on instead of this with that?
parking has park in it, so I think we're fine.
I think
Okay.
they used it as a parking lot, so they know.
Yeah. But yes, we can keep flogging this horse for a long time. Let's just solve the key issues that we have related to why we intended to do this.
I think
and
so.
go with that. So thank you. This is one you can definitely stew on for a while. Okay.
Musical mics.
You.
Financial plan, parks projects. I think I do.
I have one right here.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, never mind.
Okay. So we're on Clearwater River Trail update. That's a carry forward item. Any more comments on that, Mr. Murray?
The Clearwater River Trail, yeah, we're taking more steps sideways than we are forward on it, but we are making slow progress. And the contractor's working on it right now, and we're just carrying it forward to next year. The beach sidewalk,
Oh,
Chad, do you want to speak to
Mr.
that?
Mayor, before you
sorry.
go any further, exactly what are they doing on the river trail right?
Right now, they're working on the new bridge approaches, and we're preparing to have the abutments delivered. The timbers are going to be delivered for the Sands Creek Bridge. We've ordered the Candle Creek Bridge, which is the aluminum one. It'll be delivered in early February and installed. Our intent is that all the work will be done except the installation of that bridge, which can be done with snow on the ground. The contractor's also been given direction to complete the north parking lot.
Oh, good. Okay, thank you.
Right, the next project's the Dutch Lake Beach sidewalk. You hear me all right? Yep. So the intent is to pave the piece that is gravel now between 37 East and Dutch Lake Beach. And follow the same plan that we had already started from.
Okay.
Guitar.
Well, I mean, this gives us the connecting thing. So we're gonna have the pathway, we're paved pathway between that, so that we don't have this place where people dead end into the grassy bank. Is essentially
Yes.
what we're fixing. Okay.
So there are some changes from the design, what we learned this year, watching people on it, and it's potential we could squeeze the trail over a little bit more and give the lanes a little bit more room.
Yeah.
And adjust where that concrete barrier ends. Some people were hitting it, trying to turn into the beach.
I think we could put an interpretive sign there and hang a Trans Mountain plaque on that. Just
Oh,
suggestion.
they'd love it.
Yes, thank you. just spitballing there, but yeah, thank you. I'm grateful that that's at least an idea on the budget.
One of the ideas that had been tossed around, and that was from Mr. Mayor, was how to push that bank back a bit. Is that included in this, or is that something that we have to be looked at? Is that an important thing that we look at in terms of staging this project?
So that would be to have parking on the opposite side of the road? Is that
No. So that's the tall bank. And Mr. Mayor, I think you've always said we own that property, the right of way to it. So it would give us a lot of extra room there. And would that facilitate it? And is that important for this conversation or not? It'd be a shame to put down a bunch of pavement when that is something you'd like looked at.
So I think she's speaking, correct me if I'm wrong, the bank stabilization in front of Jasper Way on the sort of sandbank there. If we're going to pave that, or are we going to put some lock blocks or something rather to stop that from sliding down onto the trail? And we might be ahead of the game on that as far as design.
okay?
And that.
'Cause I think that was if we were going to angle parking.
Okay.
We would need to cut into that bank.
Yeah.
Is that all right?
No, Mr. Mayor.
I think that we could cut back some of that bank and maybe put some partitions up there, whether it's curbs or walk blocks, to widen it there a little bit. It's a little bit of a pinch point there. But that would come down to the final design. I think what we could do, the bank is quite loose. So we have to be careful what we start.
Yeah, I just know that it's been something you've kept your eye on, so I just wanted to tie that conversation. Thank you.
I also wanted to make mention, does that have to be paved? I'm just saying, because I was in Maple Ridge a couple of weeks ago, went for a walk, and there was a trail, beautiful trail. It's like a road actually, but we don't need that. And it's the beautiful road, and I saw old ladies and walkers, strollers being pushed through. There was no problem. Bikes, no, they didn't allow bikes in there. Sorry, but I'll show it to you. There it is, right there.
Okay, so,
What was the
so
ground?
how about we call this defined walkway versus paved path? Because
Yeah.
you're still in
Well,
design stages, and we're getting into the weeds a little.
Yeah,
Yeah.
you probably, the only thing in terms of direction is the fact that we've gone from a beautiful paved thing and then we stop. So to me right now, that small area is unfinished. Futures, I'd love to consider something like that. But if this is about budgeting,
That's fair.
I would be interested in the paving because I think it completes and makes it look finished as opposed to hanging.
Can I ask what happens to the lock blocks that go along the road there? They're not lock blocks. They are tire
parking
curb
curbs.
something or others.
Yeah.
I see you guys removed them.
They
Is
go out in the winter time at this point.
Okay.
I don't think that's the plan at this
Yeah,
point.
it's just-
And replace in the spring because they would be hit by plows in the
For
winter
sure.
time. Yeah.
Now, are we replacing with the same ones?
Yes.
Okay.
We got through the complaint process of this spring. It didn't last a terribly long time. I think we take that as a win. Knock on wood for now.
I'd never have a problem with it at all.
All good.
The next item is the Kapuscinski Ballpark fence. The outfield fence on Diamond 1 is half chain link and half wood. And it was identified a number of years ago by the insurance company as a danger. I held off changing it out because minor ball had talked about changing to baseball, which means moving the outfield fences anyways. I don't think we can wait any longer. It's a insurance safety issue and we have to replace it this year.
Can I ask what the safety issue is?
Pardon me?
What would the safety issue be? Running into
The
wood?
fence has to be all the same material. It can all be wood or it can all be chain link.
Oh, boy.
Yeah. The next issue is the septic field at Dutch Lake Beach. So the beach right now has a septic tank and a holding tank. We pay to have the tank pumped out every week during the summer. We budgeted this year, don't have the final numbers this year, we budgeted $14,000. It's been at least 12 every year for the last 3 or 4 years. We can put in a septic field, but we'll lose parking. And so we've been delaying on this until 37 East and the parking on the road was finalized. Once it's done, we should seriously consider it. Could wait another year, but it's about a 4-year payback or less to put in a field and stop pumping our own. The next item here is a dog park, which is down for a future project. Excuse me, that's pending a Parks and Trails master plan. The Yellow Iris project on Dutch Lake. I'm sorry I haven't spent very much time on this right now. I'm trying to work with the TNRD, with the Thompson-Nicola Invasive Plant Management Program, to see what our long-term plan is. Are we just going to put $30,000 into it every year forever, or is there something else we can do? Is there a better long-term solution? The Raptor reviewing platform, I hired a consulting engineer to come up and do a study on the wood, and although he feels we'll get 1 more year out of it, possibly 2, the structure's rotting, and its life expectancy is short before it should be condemned. So we really need a plan for that down the road. The last item here is the Parks and Trails Master Plan. We have a Parks Master Plan right now and a Trails Master Plan. They're both outdated. I feel we should complete the OCP and then combine these two into one plan. There's probably money savings there on community outreach, that sort of thing. And as the intent is that the trails are going to connect the parks, let's keep it all in one plan.
Thank you. And Council Simmons has their hand up, but I think we're going to also have that discussion in our council retreat. But go ahead.
Hold it, what are we gonna retreat about?
We're going to have a discussion about the OCP.
Okay,
The Trails and Parks Master Plan, and sort of more along the lines of, as a group, what's our vision? When do we need to implement it? And how detailed does it need to be, et cetera, et cetera?
okay, so then I'm safe asking these 2 questions. The first one is for the viewing platform. Those funds are targeted for 2025. Do we need to put anything in for 2024 in terms of planning? To your point that if we don't plan ahead, consultants don't wait for us.
Those funds are actually for planning. That $50,000. It's a special project. It's meant for planning.
Just planning. Okay. The second one, and you can tell me where it's appropriate that we have this discussion, but personally I would much rather look at a dog park than the Yellow Iris, because I wasn't aware that we could solve anything with $35,000. But from what I've seen in this budget, we could give the public something that they have actually asked for.
Asking for it.
don't think we could do a dog park for 35,000, but I'm agreeing with you. This is the 35,000 that's our contribution to the TNRD
Yes, I believe that's.
invasive species program.
It feels, I've only had brief discussions, but it feels like they're trying to put the responsibility for this onto us.
Okay, so that's a conversation we need to talk about scrapping involvement in that and going our own way. There's enough pamphlets out there in the world that we could probably manage this ourselves. It's not necessarily doing anything for us, but let's have a conversation about that later.
Just one quick question about the Raft River viewing platform. Was there some conversation a while back about partnering with?
There's been conversation about partnering with SIMP. There's been, the Trails Task Force has brought up the idea of a suspension bridge across the river, which would mean we'd need a trail leading up to it from the Raft River School or something like that. There's great potential for what could be done there. But definitely we would need a partnership with SIMP. There's also a bad need for washrooms there. We get a lot of tour buses stopping there and things like that, and we've got a single porta potty. It's really, it's not very good.
Yeah, Councillor Herring, did you have a question? I saw your
I
hand.
was just curious what our level of ownership there is right now. Like, what do we have as far as assets at the viewing platform?
Do we own the viewing platform? Do we own any of the property there? Is that on a road right of way?
It's on road right away. I think it's something that we inherited when we incorporated as one of our parks from the TNRD.
Okay, thank you. Okay. So are we on Public Works now? Paige?
Just to check in, do we want to take a 5-10 minute break?
Yeah.
5-minute break.
Everybody take a bathroom break. 5 minutes.
Yeah.
At which means.
47, 8.
Yes, we are. So I think we're back recording now. Okay. So we're on public works projects. Is that where we're at on this list?
I believe so.
Yes, we're on Public Works.
Thank you. Thank you. So first one is annual roads capital program. This is a carryover as well. A little bit of a carryover.
So there'll be a correction on there. This should be about the $50,000 carryover. And the project value stays the same though.
So on the Brookfield bridge work railing is in there. I can't remember where we landed on that one. Did we punt that one last year?
We did, yeah.
Okay.
Last year we deferred it.
Okay. Diverted it forward. Okay. Okay.
Should we not be doing that?
And the riprap is under
Grant
application, or did we receive that grant?
application.
Application. Okay. Thank you.
So the Brookfield Bridge, I should probably get cost estimates again. It's been I'm not sure how long ago that was designed and
Yeah.
estimated.
Okay. Yeah, for sure. On the Brookfield Bridge, not the Clearwater Bridge. Yeah. So that one. Yeah. We've been risk managing that for a lot of years. Okay. Thank you.
The riprap, refresh my memory with the Clearwater River Bridge riprap replacement.
So this has kind of come out of our flood study that is going on right now. And last year we had an emergency flood warning from upstream. We're supposed to have a
Right. Yes.
yes. So they were concerned we're going to wash out that bridge. So
Right.
we've had all the experts in and look at it, and I think we need all new riprap under there. So,
I remember now.
But it does qualify for a whole bunch of grant funding. It's an emergency type situation also. Okay, thank you. What's the charging station?
I think that one is Alsit's project.
Okay. Okay,
We don't need one now, do we? We have the one at Timmy's.
Actually,
go ahead.
yes, Councilor Bratton, through your worship. So we do have the new Tesla supercharger ready to commission soon, it seems. However, that does still only, at the time, only work for Tesla vehicles. There is still all the other EVs that do require fast charging. When we look at bringing in, how it applies to tourists or people traveling the highway, there's a large gap there. So this is for the 2025 budget. It would be primarily grant funded or funded through LG cap funding. So it wouldn't be out of taxation. It's just kind of to put it on the radar for 2025 at this time.
Right. Interesting.
So the capital spare management program is buying equipment to put on the shelf in case of breakdowns. So we're going to continue to add to the inventory, and we have to spend some time with our asset management plan. There is one in place, but we haven't sat down as a group to dive into where we should be going with that. So.
And you already gave us an update on the backup power generator. So that's good.
Clearwater Valley Road supply main is design only.
What is that?
What's about that?
Yeah. So that is there a cost in there for that? No. It is currently like pre-design stage right now. We're choosing an alignment. So we had $20,000 towards that this year, but so it's still on the list, but I don't see anything in the 5-year plan.
Can I get clarification on what project this is?
So that is there's an 8-inch main currently from the existing reservoir down to Eden Road. and the rest of it is 12-inch, I think, that goes from well one. So there's kind of a choke point there.
So you need to go larger?
Yes. Yep.
And that's a holdup for expansion potentially on the Park Drive corridor too, is it not?
Ultimately, yeah. That's not the that's not the only project, but that I think that the generators are key, and then there's some water main looping. Yeah, depends how many units they want to build out. So
Is Eden Road where Dairy Queen is?
yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, this is on Clearwater Valley Road, I guess. So.
Oh, okay.
So basically, everything on this page is stuff that we need to accomplish at some point as part of a longer term plan. Other than the first two, which are basically funded already, and then the rest are, when we have the conversation about what do we lump together to go for, one large grant or scale it for grant. How many of these things do we try to accomplish at once, if that is thing, and if not, how do we fund it elsewise? Councillor Sim.
So you've got the $20,000 for the planning stage for Clearwater Valley Road. Is there capacity or desire or otherwise to do another neighborhood and lump it together?
Another neighborhood.
So if it's only Clearwater Valley Road, but we've got some other ones, and if it's only for planning, where else would money be wisely spent this year on planning?
Oh, I see. I think the next project listed on there, the Strawberry Flats PRV, I'm going to try and get the design completed on that with that $50,000 that we have allocated for design.
What's a PRV?
Pressure reducing valve.
Okay.
Basically stops things from blowing up and reduces the pressure so that anyways.
And I would like to get some designs done just for sewer water replacement, road rebuild, to have those ready when grants do come up.
Yeah.
So does that amount of money cover that for you right now?
Well, I haven't picked the locations or the scope of the project yet, but.
I guess for me, what I'm struggling with is how do we piecemeal? Do we do an overarching, like what is the best strategy if we're moving forward with a financial management plan? And how does it work together? And how do we leverage our dollars at the beginning to look at scope of project? So we've got a number of very expensive projects up there, but if we only do it one at a time, is that the best approach? Or do we front end to look at how do we cover it all? And do we look at that as part of our infrastructure master plan? Like what is needed so that we can be effective to do, as Councillor Matheson said, is do that steady, sustainable growth? And does this slide answer that question?
Some of this is, there's two parts to it. Some of it is growth, some of it is replacement of assets. So this is asset management.
Right.
And a lot of this where this stuff will fail. Some of this is to make things work properly. That already exist, like looping. But yeah, exactly. We have what, $40 million that we need to deal with in the next 20 years, just on infrastructure, just on the next 2 pages. So we have to figure that out.
But I understand what you're saying. We do have to get designs together for key infrastructure and ready to build.
I'm just feeling really muddled in what comes next, the chicken or the egg.
Right.
And I'm hoping that this would be one of the things that council focuses on. And I just want to look for direction on what support is needed so that when we go out into the public and they say, well, what's going on next for Clearwater, there is a definitive answer and plan in place. And even if it says we've got $20,000 for this year, but the staging, I just don't understand how the community grows financially with the financial equation.
If you want to take that, go ahead. But, I think staff can take notes and we'll have a larger conversation with that. Because that's the next 2 pages are most of a day conversation alone.
Just a lot of these projects, I believe, came from master plans and perhaps the funding wasn't thought of at the time.
Totally wasn't.
I guess as we move forward, when we have a master plan, let's think about the funding. And so we're trying to fund these big projects. At the same time, we're trying to plan for the future. So it is a little bit of both. I understand why you feel muddled exactly how the step is gonna go, but we're gonna do one step at a time, I feel. We can't do it all, but we're going to do one step at a time and make really good decisions about which project you wanna go first. And when we talk to the Director of Operations, he's going to assess the risk of these projects and which ones should go. Right?
Yes.
And not to say that I don't think that there's a plan, it's just that I don't understand the plan. And I want to know that, have we financed the plan? And if we haven't, does it need to? So I just want to give the support that's needed.
If we had financed the plan, you would see reserves that are quite a bit larger than they are today. So that we can go ahead and spend the, $875,000 on the PRV valve or PRV in Strawberry Flats, but we have $230,000 in reserves. So therefore, we have two options. We have an option to grant, finding a grant that matches, or we have an option, maybe there's a different type of project that doesn't cost as much but still does the same type of job, perhaps. Or we have an option of increasing fees to some degree. We have options, but we don't have the reserve for $875,000 in the water plant to do that job.
There's not a quick answer to that one. And I think we as a council, reading the tea leaves on what's going on in the world with grants, our success rates, Class B estimates, how much we want to spend on planning. As Councillor Matheson was suggesting earlier, that how far ahead do we get on things for growth, which you were specifically talking about growth as far as building infrastructure, when we have all this stuff here that we need to tackle, and we need assistance from other levels of government to tackle. Because there's the scope of any one of these projects is beyond what we could do reasonably with taxation. It's just not going to happen solely with taxation. That said, at some level, we have to start making the decision: how much do we start putting in reserves by increasing taxation? Or Councillor Sims, what other options do we have other than taxation? Go ahead, Councillor Herron.
Yeah, and I'd like to that other options point. I haven't looked in a little while, so I'm not sure. But are any of these projects on the list for DCC? Well,
Some of them are.
some of them are. Just because if we have large-scale developments going forward with, say, 200 homes or something like that, that could be a significant chunk of money coming in through DCCs, and that could contribute to those as well. It's just another piece in the funding pie, I guess.
Because I believe the Clearwater Valley Road supply main is DCC project, and the generators are DCC project. The reservoir on Sunshine Valley should be as well.
And one of the difficulties there is DCCs are charged at time of building permit, and we're not going to see 200 homes built in the next 10 years. So it would be quite a while before we see those DCCs.
So several years ago, we were put with the decision, I think it was the beginning of last term, do we want to switch, and it was suggested during a relatively quiet time that we thought was a busy time for development, do we want to switch DCCs charged at the time of subdivision or the time of building permits? So when a lot is subdivided, a lot of communities do DCCs, collect the DCCs at the time that one lot is broken into 2 or 20 or 30, and those are paid for up front. We thought the argument was made, well, what we're seeing right now, and to Mr. Prime's point, is that somebody could could subdivide 20 lots. If we charge them, we'll call it $20,000 in DCCs at the time of subdivision, we would have that money in our bank to provide, as a fund to provide services. But we saw such slow housing growth here. Was it reasonable, or would we stall all subdivision if we did that? So maintaining the idea of collecting DCCs at time of building permit when somebody was actually ready to build seemed like a kinder way to do it to encourage subdivision. It worked. The problem is that leaves us fronting the cost
Yeah.
of a large chunk of this. And to Councillor Matheson's point that he was trying to make is, what's the reality of growth? How much of it is going to be happen in a calendar year? How many $1 million in infrastructure are we going to have to create? And some of that subdivisions, I mean, we've got failed subdivisions in this town right now. We have my street alone. I'm not going to call my street a failed subdivision, but there's at least 5 empty building lots in 2 blocks that are still there for 50 years. So, you know, we're looking at all the subdivision growth over here on Park Drive, but there's Egram Homes development. The Windhaven has 3 or 4 empty lots in it. Fawn. There are neighborhoods in this town where there are existing building lots that haven't been built on that anybody could today go and get a permit for and build, because they're already subdivided, they're already zoned, they're already everything, it meets everything. So how do we manage this? And one of the poor choices that we probably made in the past was not sticking to DCCs at time of subdivision, so we could build that DCC reserve.
That might be something to add back on our legislative agenda.
At this particular point in history, with the amount of activity we have right now, I don't know if that's politically wise. But yes, once everything settles down and we get to a pattern of building 10 houses a year, we really need to rethink that. If we're gonna, we may, you know, these are the kind of choices we may have to make in the future, because, or shortly, because we may have no other choice but to change that. But yeah, right now, with the amount of things in play, throwing that into the conversation, I don't think it's going to happen. Anyways, let's keep, go ahead. Yeah.
Sorry, and just to update, the DCC bylaw did receive 2 readings and go to the province. The Inspector of Municipalities, it did come back with some questions. It's just been on sort of in limbo since then due to sort of some potential legislation in the fall. So we still do have a DCC bylaw update for 3rd reading at some point in the future.
On which?
We have, let's go through the sewer projects.
Did you want to look at any more water projects?
I think we understand that
Yeah.
there's equity to do, and that we need,
I have right. So my question is we keep assigning grant, and I think if you explained it the way we did last year, is that we have to give it somewhere, like we have to do. It is not an option to say unfunded, because
No.
so because
Not in-
I
not
think
in- Not in the bylaw. The bylaw has to balance. It has to be funded. We could take it off the bylaw.
there's a couple of things. One is it gives the impression that it's going to happen, which I'm wondering is misleading at this point in time. And if that's the case, how do we address it? And how do we actually articulate the fact that it is $15 million and the municipality has to look seriously at that?
We don't need to include it in the bylaw, but we can include it in our planning. Because if it's unfunded, we wouldn't include it in the bylaw,
What do you think about that?
as long as we don't lose focus on what are the projects ahead of us. Even if it's not in the bylaw, we can't. It has to be funded, or it has to have a revenue source. It has to balance. As per legislation.
Yeah.
So what's critical, what's which list, and this is where we have to have this conversation. What's reasonable expectation of growth? What are we doing here on some of these projects? You know, number 1 on sewer is siphon replacement. Some of the water looping things, are we risk managing those areas because they have low fire flow? Are they going to see growth that we need to size up those lines. There's a lot of variables there, and what I'm seeing in the plans that these are the things that are foreseen that we need to do, and I'm sure we need to do all of them. Just
So in our capital infrastructure plan, do we have it as it's ranked in terms of priorities?
I don't think so.
So I guess what I'm wondering is if we were to go back and if we were to review the infrastructure master plan and we ranked our projects, then as one went off, one went on. So we still have the plan, to your point, but it doesn't sit here in our budget.
The budget also works similar, as in having it on the 5-year budget that's ranked it, essentially.
let's go through the actual projects. There's a whole
It's like the,
Yeah, and I'm just trying to get the theory as we move forward, because it seems to be this is the year where we make some different and new choices that are essential.
Sites and replacement. Are we cost B on that now?
they're still completing the design, but it should be by Christmas.
And I believe for 2024, we'll probably be looking for a grant so that we can actually do the project in 2025.
Yeah, I've been priming that particular case politically. Okay.
And to like the siphon project, I'm not sure. Like we talk about it a bit at Public Works. Like, so what if we did have a break in the siphon and try and estimate a cost? I mean, it's a moving target. There's a lot of things that could go wrong with it, but I think we're in the hundreds of thousands of dollar range, like $100,000 or $200,000. Like if there was a leak and we had to hire sucker trucks to work round the clock until we got the break fixed. I mean, finding it, locating it, trying to fix it on that hillside.
Well, and I appreciated the fact that you're contemplating how it would be dealt with. I do recall that this actually just happened to a town in Alberta.
Oh, yeah.
That flooded effluent into the world. Anyways, but yeah, no, thank you for having the plan B. And let's hope that plan A is still getting replacement grant for this. Blower room upgrades.
So this is down at the sewer lagoon.
Okay.
This was something that got cut, I think, from the 2018 design. So they installed more blowers in the existing blower room, and now it's overheating. And the initial plan was to put a rooftop air conditioner on there.
Okay.
And it
Yes. So this, not that we want to stray again, we need to do the tour. Okay, so this is a cooling project that needs to happen to keep everything functioning down there. Okay.
and we are losing equipment due to heat because it gets up to about 50 degrees in that building Celsius. Like
So it's costing us more money.
very hot.
Some hot shit, anyways.
Yeah.
And it smells
Sorry.
great.
And this is recorded. I'm sorry. I apologize to everybody listening. Anyways, critical spare asset management is the same thing as water. Hospital lift station replacement, somewhat dependent on Park Drive development as well.
Correct.
What the final numbers show up as to what we have to scale on that. SCADA, the gift that keeps on giving. And then the sledging equipment purchase. Okay.
I thought we were all good to go with desludging
This is a
stuff.
It's a carry forward.
carry forward. Okay, thank you. And then there's design of lift station, stormwater master plan. Is that that's another legislative requirement, the stormwater master plan? Is that something we need to do? I think. I think it's something that was put on there.
It's encouraged for sure, but
It's
not.
encouraged and it's grant funded.
Yes.
That's right.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
No.
What's that mean? Siphon project engineering.
That is figuring out how we're gonna fix it. Get the engineer to do, or is that the additional?
That was the
Get it up to class B.
carry forward of the $100,000 that we are using to plan the project, or to do the engineering for it.
Okay, cool. Okay, any questions on anything on the rest of financial plan sewer projects? Okay.
Siphon scaring me.
Siphon is always there. Okay. Hey, we're on a check-in page.
We already checked in.
Check in, check out. Are we ready to move forward to public engagement? Is there any more questions about the projects?
I think we're all gonna need to sit back and read this list, and then bring questions to staff,
That'd be great.
if there's any questions. Anybody else? Feelings? It's a lot. Yeah. but-
Is there anything that should be on the list that is not on the list? I don't mean to put you on the spot, I just, that is the question, is there something out there that you see that we didn't pick up on, or we forgot, or
Swag.
swag? I'm hoping it's not $10,000 or greater. We have room for that.
Yeah.
Actually, I was just trying to be really calm about it.
She's pretending it doesn't matter.
As far as things, I mean, there's the larger conversation that we need to have about how we're gonna, we have massive infrastructure in this town, and we have to, there's an expectations discussion that we have to have. We all know how well, rubblizing Dunn Lake Road has gone over, but, every year we have this conversation about, what are the public expectations and what can we actually deliver with the size of the community we have, with the economy we have, with our budgets, with available grants, with taxation levels, and we are going to hit a wall sooner or later, so we need to keep having that conversation. But as Councillor Sim says, we have to start making some hard decisions on some of this stuff.
I think for me, one of the things I struggle with a little bit is how everything is interconnected. And if we do one thing, we're seeing stuff in the budgets here that seem to stand alone as single projects. And I'd like to get a feel for, if you do this project, how does it help lead into the next one? And that one benefits the next one. Get a bit of a flow feeling of how one supports the other. And I think that'll help with the decision-making process about budgeting and priorities. And I don't know how we can get that feel. That's what I'm looking for right now.
Yeah, it feels disjointed.
Is I see all this individual stuff and it's overwhelming. And I need this feel that if we do this, then it'll help us do this, and it carries through.
But I think that that's also the importance of the OCP, because that's the community planning piece, and then that articulates itself into the budget.
Yeah, that's kind
And
of
that's
what I was
also why,
thinking.
oh, sorry, no? No, go ahead.
Well, I guess it's a bit of a commentary on your comment. There's no doubt what you're saying. There's an awful lot of infrastructure that needs to be sorted, and the financial capacity of the district is limited. There's limitations to everything. So it's been my experience that I think council would be well served by looking seriously at how to fund them and creating it. What Linda was saying is like a financial master plan. It's a long horizon document. Looks hard at assets, how they're being paid off, but also what things really ought to be self-funding and pay their way. And I don't think the district's in a position to do that. That's part of the reason why you're hitting these bumps right now. And I think that it would be valuable to do that long-term financial planning part, because that will show you what levers you can touch and what levers you can't, because you can't increase taxes 15%. It just won't happen. Even if that's what you need. And I'm not suggesting you need that. Excuse me. So, I think having that certainty around a real policy document would benefit council. And there's some hard choices to make for sure. But I think it's very doable. It's certainly something I would recommend making a priority, because ultimately that's where you'll see how to fund all these things over the horizon, whether the infrastructure and the parks and so forth. It'll find ways to do it, because what I've learned in my time is it's so easy to forget that some services really ought to pay for themselves. You know, and some of them need a subsidy, or some of them roads, they don't make any money. So how do you balance those things that don't make money with those things that do make money? Try and get as much of the services that can generate revenue and pay for themselves as possible. And sometimes that takes a bit of time to get there, because you can't just ratchet up fees just tomorrow. But I think that's part of the strategy I would recommend.
So I am wondering is when you come back with the resource, which is, you know, phase 2 or whatever, if we're going to be hearing some different things about the capacity of the organization. It's been noted that we have a number of policies that have to be reviewed, if that's going to be in there, because I think that's one of our challenges, is that our policies are holding us up, but we don't have, you know, the manpower to deal with it. And I think that that's something that we'd like to see have happen in terms of that. You didn't hear anything from recreation. Are we good? It's kind of a passion project, so, we haven't actually seen an increase or seen a lot of there. Is it managing, or is there room for expansion? We haven't, just where's that at? That would be my question.
Well, I don't have a shared space. There's a few ideas, of course, that we want to do. I do have a few plans for next year, all that I could fit within my current budget, and also with grants that I'm applying for. So given everything else going on, I didn't necessarily want to add to it at this point. I'm also working on, we got delayed with Plan H, so we had a grant for that to redo our policies for recreation, culture, and events. But within that, we want to do some public engagement sessions. And so until I do those public engagement sessions, I feel like that'll help guide some more ideas for what we want to implement in the community.
So the reason for that is I always remember Mike Bernier saying something, is that the reason that the Liberals were, they lost so badly was because they kept focusing on how to pay down the mortgage, and they forgot the fact that the kids need swimming lessons and hockey lessons and, you know, some different fun things. And so as we move through this budget, one of the ways that I think that our community can visibly see, you know, things that everybody feels impacted by is through your department. And if we address that, it is a very inexpensive way to keep people overall happy, because not everybody's going to be advantaged by some of this infrastructure upgrades, but everybody can be benefited from the fact that paint night is offered. So that becomes that overarching one. So as we balance hard decisions, you know, the things that bring a community joy and have an expectation within a community at a small price, I think it's valuable to consider.
I think the biggest thing for us too is the second floor expansion. That would be a priority for me to see go ahead, but working with Roger on that, I see that it's a very long road, it seems. So trying to utilize other spaces and make sure that we can continue growing recreation, like you said, to offer more and more.
Yeah, and just on that, I mean, I do know that, you know, and Councillor Herring and I, we've spoken a lot about that, is that second floor, we, you know, I'll speak for him and we share that passion, is because that there's a lot of people that said, yeah, we'd move there if there was a gym. So it's also an economic driver as well as a lot of other things. So, you know, to me, it's an important project, very important project, because it adds livability to a community.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, where are we?
We are in public engagement. So the next step is public engagement. So I'm starting to plan that engagement. Has anybody ever seen this public engagement participation spectrum? Yes.
I think that.
Yes. Good. So IAP 2. It stands for the International Association of Public Participation. It's a model that's used around the world for public participation and engagement in relationship to governments, individuals, institutions, and entities. So it's a very common model. So the model, the type of engagement along the top, inform, consult, involve, collaborate, and empower, is based on the increasing of public impact. So if you want to empower people, you would increase their public engagement. And off to the left, you have the public participation goal and the promise to the public and some examples. So where are we as it relates to the financial plan and projects and things like that? I believe we will probably be sitting in the consult categories, where we will check with the public for feedback or analysis or alternatives or decisions. But we also get back to them and we'll keep them informed. We'll listen to what they have to say, listen to their concerns and their aspirations, and provide feedback back to them. That could include, if you go to the next slide, it could include things like just ideas. Perhaps in November, I would like to plan a public engagement in November about some of the projects that we have listed. The ones in the current year, or 2024, perhaps we want to do a survey, perhaps we want to do a video. And of course, always update the website to highlight the financial planning. And those are some of my ideas, but I'm here to listen to council. If council has some ideas of public engagement, I know Councillor Sim has provided some feedback. I've tried different things. I'm always open for feedback for public consultation, but last year where I felt we were the most effective, I guess, is when we went to a public event, not holding an event, if you know what I mean. So we go where people are. And so I know that there's some indoor farmers market. I'm not even sure if we're allowed to go to that. But anyways, if that's
As long as you book a table, I'm quite sure, this is a homegrown idea, right? So never
Or
mind.
you could even just do it out in the hallway too, as
Yeah.
people come in.
Yeah. So
Stop. Do a survey.
it's in our building.
You've done that before.
You cannot go inside until you do the survey.
Yeah.
No, and maybe we could partner with Leanne as well. Like there's things we can partner as a group. We would do that for sure. So that's my thinking, at least.
I would agree with that. Creating I don't know if we have a requirement to create a specific event, but partnering with other events seems to be the winner as far as actual numbers on this.
Hang out at the vaccination clinic.
Yeah. Oh, that was my good one.
Yeah, we're being recorded. Anyways, I'll just stop talking. But yeah, I really like that, and I did like some of the stuff, even with the event that we held in the gym that was specific to this. Some of the tables, stations, presentations that you did and were created were great. But I think it's also on council to promote the living hell out of these, and I know it's pretty much a futile task most of the time, but we got to try to get people to engage at these events. Yeah.
There's a possibility of live streaming an event, like you do your whole presentation.
What about a seniors lunch event?
There's the seniors lunch event you could come to.
Sorry, it's throwing you to the wolves as somebody who's been there, but yeah, I mean, it is a place where you are going to get
A lot of questions.
thoughtful questions and responses. I
As
get
long-
45 minutes to 50 minutes of it.
As long as I have a counselor support.
That would be me.
Yeah, an independent counselor would be useful too.
That's
But yes, callus up before you go.
Yeah.
I did find that when you did the video a couple of years ago and it was just available for people to look, I thought it was really good. I know it came out quite soon to when the open house was, but it was very informative. It allowed people to go back and check. The other thing is that it was that constant piece that disputed any interpretation that wasn't quite accurate. And I thought that you did a really, really good job with that.
I know that we all kind of shy away from the internet, but you get a lot of interaction if it's specifically a certain place and information put factually out there with a video. And like you say, live streaming would be good. Our world is turning digital. And people don't come in person quite often now. And if we're looking at our age range of 25 to 35, 45, that age demographic doesn't interact personally. They much prefer to interact digitally. So I see a change in times. I know a lot of people are adverse to it, and they're always trying to tell me to never mind. But I think we need to start interacting a little bit with parameters around the conversation via social
Yeah.
media.
Yeah.
It can get into the weeds
Yeah,
and
there-
into the water.
there
but I
is.
honestly think it needs to. We have to get with the times.
There's lots of options for that.
Yeah.
Not necessarily seeding it on Facebook
No.
as far as
No.
the links, but there are Let's Talk Kamloops. There's lots of communities that have
Go
got
onto the website.
a Let's Talk type forum,
Yes,
which is
yes.
their own controlled forum for the feedback that is digital.
Yeah. And I don't mean censored. I
yeah.
mean with parameters, with respect and dignity,
Yeah.
and everybody's
Because
on the same page.
This horseshoe is we're political. We are supposed to have the thick skin and take
Right.
the thing. That is not what all staff are designed for. So, yeah, absolutely. If we could find a respectful way of doing that,
and I don't know what that is.
There's models out there. I don't know if we're gonna get to that this year,
Right.
but
I think we
yeah.
do need to do a shift though,
Yeah.
a little bit. And we started because recreational, like we do have our webpage and it's on Facebook and different parameters and I see the recreational events position is on Instagram and stuff. So that's fantastic. So we're branching out, which is awesome.
Just as you say that, I agree with you. And it would be great if if council would put up their hand and say, hey, I would like to be a speaker, for certain topics. Perhaps, maybe
Right.
we could do, like, if you do a video, you can have clips of a council member, you could have clips of somebody else, or you could have, we can.
We've
Sure,
got an
that's a great
in
idea.
too.
Yeah, but we can't keep relying on him because he makes a living on that. That said, but yes, much the way that the wildfire briefings are held in the Caribou and things like that, where there's one professional in the department and then there's a communications person
Yes.
and it's a conversation that happens on screen that doesn't necessarily have direct public comment other than below the video or other avenues, email or whatever. So yeah, I mean there's options there.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Just add options.
Councillor.
Podcasts are a great way to.
Yeah, that's another one.
I
That's
think
actually
like
Council podcast.
one of the things I'm worried about with like all of these formats is the sort of educational mode of it. And I'm wondering if there's another toolkit out there. I think you've done some great stuff in terms of getting the public engaged, but I think videos, written communications, all of those statements are for like one type of learner. And I think we've seen a ton of people with a lack of basic civics education in this community. And so I'm wondering how we can kind of bridge that gap with more interactive
Yes,
type of
that's actually
activities.
cool.
And particularly, like, it would be cool to have something where, say, the public builds their own budget, and then when they put paving Dunlake Road on there, it's like they see a 40% tax increase, and they go, oh, maybe I'll bump that one down and bump that one up, or whatever, just to get a sense of, like, what the
we
real
do.
constraints and limitations of a budget are, and not the imaginary, yes, it would be great if we could just, not pay people, but also pave Dunlake Road, but that's not a practical reality kind of thing,
There is actually a game that does that.
There is. We should play that again.
The new fun game, the whole community.
Oh, it's
can
an
play.
old game, but it's very effective.
Oh. I think James.
I see some pending comments there. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say to your comment, Counselor, I have done those sorts of things before. They take a lot of, they're expensive to do them properly, because to not do them properly or do them at a high enough level, you just get skewered. But they can be incredibly effective, and we've done things like a Friday thing with the mayor, talk about an issue, have a sort of a interview panel. The interview format works very well, but it takes several days to prepare that, even just for a 5-10 minute segment. It's probably an hour for each minute, just to give you an idea.
That'd be worth.
Yeah, it's not winging it only works every once in a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, Councillor Sim.
I'd really like to take something to the high school.
I was going to say
and-
that too.
On that sort of high level, I think it ties in a lot of those learning objectives. I think it talks a lot about, what to expect from your local leadership. I think it talks to why you want to vote. and I think it can be fun, and I think that the kids absolutely love it. Mayor Harwood did it in his term. COVID prevented Mayor Blackwell from doing it. He would be great. But I think just getting that and having those kids report out on it and what they learned, it would be really interesting to then convey that out in a newsletter. The other thing is I think that there's some responsibility of consulting with our youth. They have things to say. I just listened to one little guy out in the hallway, and he's like, "Oh, you're on budgets. Are we going to get a rock climbing wall yet?" Right? But if you don't talk about future citizens,
that's right.
You know, so and I think that there's something to be said for that.
Thank you. That was good.
Just one last slide, and I think you probably know just one more. There we go. Here's our financial plan timeline, just so you know what's coming up. And I believe there's probably more, because I heard that there was a council retreat to do the strategic plan. And so public consultation is on the docket for November, December to February. We're looking at a draft financial plan. March through April, we're looking for approval and adoption. May, we're looking for the bylaw, the tax rate bylaw, and so on. And between that, you can see in the water notes there is Questica continues to be implemented, as well as getting our audit done. So the finance group is busy, or we're all busy, but this is really important, and this is a priority for us. And I am very thrilled that you're talking about the future. And it's a tough conversation, and it's not always easy. So I'm thrilled about it, and I think we can find a path forward that you will all be proud of, to stand up to say, this is the financial plan, this is where we're going. I am confident we are going to be where we need to be in 5 years from now.
So my question is what do you see public consultation looking like in November?
If council is okay with bringing some of these projects forward, I would probably have similar kind of information, just the project list. I'm not sure when the council retreat is going to be. There might be some items that you want to take off the list, some items you want to put on. I'm also, I have a little bit of time to actually, it's not like next week, which last year sometimes I was a little bit behind. So I can probably develop a reasonable survey. Perhaps we can put it on an iPad and have those are kind of my ideas related to what they want to do. Maybe we'll bring back our spin the wheel, ask some questions.
So you know, my thought is what you're talking about right now, which is presentation similar to what we did last year, but then it's on us as well as a group of council to find those direct group community engagement opportunities, like the school, like the seniors thing, cognizant that this will take staff time, but also find the ones that are of high value for good responses so we get feedback. And just alone on the two suggested, seniors lunch and an opportunity at the school, I think you could get a heck of a lot of positive, useful feedback. You're still missing people in the middle, but hanging out at the hockey arena sometimes.
I think with that, though, is that one of my experiences on the school board is that sometimes people misunderstand what consultation is. So they think that when the district goes out to speak with them, is they're like, this is my opportunity to tell you what I think the taxes should be spent on. And so when they find out that, oh, you want me to talk about a fire truck? I don't know anything about a fire truck. I mean, it's like, welcome to council, but moving on. But that's where that's where we break down. And I think right now we are in a period where we need to develop trust. And so if we're going to call it a consultation or a budget presentation or something, but consultation, I would say to most people, I want to give you my opinion and tell you what I think. How am I speaking on that one?
No, I get what you're saying. I mean, we're basically telling people how it's going to go. Mr. Thackeray, I think, has an idea on that, so go ahead.
I'm wondering, Council, would it make sense to put some priority on the long-term financial plan strategy.
Yes.
And make that as part of your consultation rather than focusing on a trail or a truck or a road. I think that the public will probably would like to know where do you think we're going to be in 5, 10, 15 years, and that master plan would be your consultation. I would put focus on it because that's where things are going to come up as to, you know, what does the revenue model look like? What does your utilities revenue model look like? What's the long-term sustainability going to be for your utilities? You know, are they going to be okay with what might need to be done? Maybe they're not, but they might be okay with it if they know.
I like that. Go,
So that would
yeah.
tie into possibly doing a launch of the strategic plan to the public, because
Yes.
right, because the strategic plan is that top end.
Arching.
It's the overarching.
Yeah.
So it gives sort of that mission, and I think we've all been quite clear about the fact that, you know, the financial stewardship is very important, and it speaks how that's going to translate out, and then it allows people to see the goals. So it kind of makes everybody human and on the same page, and then it can be operationalized into the next stage.
And I should qualify myself. Linda and I barely talked about this stuff, so I don't want to sandbag anybody.
Yeah.
Just in fairness, and because there are a lot of things on the go, but I do think it's valuable sometime in you know, Q4, Q1 to get into this, because this is where I think the rubber hits the road for the municipality.
Yeah, I agree. I think this is about, there's two discussions. We're talking about next year's financial consultation, which is essentially looking at items and asking the public to comment on items, whereas the 5-year financial plan is themes. It's talking about how we're going to move forward in direction. And the dreams, aspirations, or concerns on financial management are much better handled as themes versus things that people can dissect as items. So,
Conceptual and the theory and
yeah,
laying it out,
so
are we all on the same page?
the feedback that, oh, I love this, you are all financially managing responsibly. Oh, I really love this. I love the idea that we're headed in this direction with growth. A lot of that would come out in a 5-year financial plan versus, you know, fire truck this year, dog park next year, whatever it is. People can still say those aspirational things or those things that they wish for, but there's no immediate pressure in the current budget to deliver them right now, which is what they expect when we do
That's the
fund.
problem,
Yeah,
is if
so
we set ourselves up for it,
we
it's
do.
like, well, where is it?
so let's
Like
think
Santa.
about how we separate those into two things, and you know, I think that's kind of where we're headed. Thank you. Anything further? Motion to adjourn? Oh, sorry, Mr. Yep. Chad?
Facilities tour. They got
Yes.
canceled in May. If you guys wanted to reschedule that, it might help visualize what all these projects are.
So can we do that as a, okay, so how busy is everybody at this table in the next month or 3 weeks?
Busy season, but that's okay. We make it work.
So, because I'm just gonna say, you know, we can doodle pull it again.
Can we actually, and I don't think everybody needs to be included, or maybe they do, but to me, I'd like to get a calendar and just mark off when I'm available, when I'm not available, because the time goes by and I find that it's like 10 days notice and it's super difficult right now. Like place marking some of these things would be helpful.
Yeah, sure. So
Let's just say sure, because
no, I'm agreeing with you 100% because I'm in a problem for next week where, you know, somebody's coming up. The next 2 weeks, I got somebody coming up to do things with buy stuff and things like that, electricians, and I'm going, well, you're just assuming I'm available in the next 2 weeks, and I'm not. Figure out on your calendar, Mr. Carmichael, when a convenient couple of days are. Throw them to us. We'll pin something down a couple weeks out, if that works.
Okay.
Okay.
You're gonna be getting into
Yeah.
snow.
You might have to. Might have to wear your snow boots, and we may have to cancel again. That's okay. Those are things. Okay. Motion to adjourn. Any further conversations? Thank you. Any further conversations? You can always, you know, come in and talk to Mr. Thackeray or, you know.